All right, everybody. Thanks for joining me. I'm your host, Hype Man, and today I have Tron from the Ravencoin development team on the show. So thanks so much for joining me, Tron.
Hey, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so just give the audience a little bit of a background. What did you do before you started to work on Ravencoin?
So I was a computer guy from like way back from like 13 years old. So I kind of lived through a little bit like the PC revolution and sort of through the internet revolution and then the crypto revolution. So I feel super blessed to have kind of like worked my way through all of those.
Yeah.
The So since kind of early age, I was an entrepreneur. So I started a company with kind of my dad's help to kind of help build a computer and things like that, and then ran a I guess it would be a internet utilities company. That actually before the internet utilities company, it was we were doing like, well, it was internet utilities company, I guess, first. So we did shareware type stuff,
Yeah.
things that little tools that kind of helped on Windows specifically that I thought were missing pieces. Like almost some of them were like almost silly. They were one of them was when you went on to Windows on the internet, which was dial up at the time, right? So you had a modem and you clicked and it made the noises or whatever. But before it did that, it said, "Are you sure you want to go on the internet?" So you opened up the browser and it's like, "Are you sure you want to go on the internet?" And you clicked yes. You clicked yes every time. You wouldn't have opened the browser if you didn't want to. So it was literally a thing that sat in the tray and clicked yes for you. And we sold a ton of them.
Wow.
And so, that kind of stuff. So did shareware come? And then we did helped other companies get shareware to be able to take credit cards. So we did registration for shareware for other companies. And that was kind of tricky to get done, but we did it. And so we did that. And then my brother actually took over that company, ended up selling it to Digital River ultimately. And then I moved into internet utilities, which was like search tools and tools that would download entire websites for you that you could like take on a plane where you didn't have internet access. It would just follow all the links and download everything and patch up all the URL things. And then stuff that did meta search, so it searched all the search engines that like Yahoo and Lycos and Hotbot, and a bunch of it are probably out of business now because of Google. But at the time, when these search engines were indexing stuff, each one has a little bit because they hadn't indexed the whole internet. And so the program itself, which ran on Windows, basically merged all of the results. And then you could look at stuff and it took out duplicates and then told you what you'd seen. So you could run it the next day, same search, and you get a few more, but it knew what you'd seen, what you hadn't seen. And so that was called Squirrel, Search and Query URLs. And so we were going to name the company Squirrel, but that was taken. So we did Blue Squirrel. So Blue Squirrel was my company for a long time. I ended up selling that. And then, after that, I worked for the company that Blue Squirrel had sold to. And then that was bought by another company and I helped them do computer-based training stuff. So that was CBT Systems, and got renamed and is now part of Skillsoft. But that was kind of my kind of thing going up to that. I ended up buying the internet utilities company back because the company that kind of like bought, sort of they changed direction and they didn't need the internet utilities anymore. So I actually bought those back. And a lot of the tools and things that we had built were useless, especially in context of Google doing a really great job at search of everything. But some of the things that the company that bought us had bought, specifically ClickBook, still had legs. It was a program that took anything you printed, turned it into a book. Anyway, that was a long history, but that was my pre kind of 2013, which is where I found crypto history.
It's really interesting. It sounds like you've had a lot of success with what you've done in your ventures too. So it sounds like technologically, maybe you're kind of maybe ahead of your time, and you were able to kind of think of some things and come up with some things that people needed in the moment, which is that's an awesome skill to have, honestly.
Yeah, it's been fun, and a lot of it was like, what do people need, right? Because you're trying to fill a need, and then you'd go online and you go, oh yeah, there's already 6 of them, and there's one big one, and so I did that a lot, right? There was especially while I was doing the internet utilities thing, I think it was something, oh, this would be great, and it's like, oh yeah, it's already done and done well. So when I finally found something that hadn't been done, I'd jump on that. So
that's really cool. I mean, it's cool to find your niche like that. So fast forward back to 2013, and you got into crypto. Walk me through kind of, getting into crypto, your crypto journey and all that.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think I'd probably, and this is just from like vague recollection, probably seen it or heard about it probably in 2011, but kind of ignored it at that point. I'd heard about mining, but I had in my head an incorrect picture in my head of what mining was. I imagined like constructing this really hard to construct number, and the computer's just churning away trying to construct this thing that became a Bitcoin that was like, it took a lot of power and energy, and it finally constructed it, and then that made it like valuable because the computer had taken all this time to construct it, and that's kind of what I had in my head as mining. It was, and that they were going to be harder and harder to construct, with this halvening thing, and that's what mining was. Not at all that. It's basically just a lottery system to kind of pace the issuance, and it's a lot simpler than what I had in my head. But I ignored in 2011, ignored what it was because that didn't appeal to me. And then in 2013, it's not that I finally understood mining. It's just that there was an event in 2013 in Cyprus specifically, where they basically like closed the bank doors and said, we're going to take part of your money before we open these bank doors. And it got a lot of press, I would say around the world, because in general, we think, oh, we put our money in the bank and it's our money and they're kind of holding it there for us. We know that it's not like literally the cash that we handed them is in a box, but we also expect to be able to go get what we consider our money. And here, this bank in Cyprus was kind of violating that, what seems like a kind of a reasonable assumption. And then, so because of that, though, there were lots of articles about, oh yeah, the money that you put in the bank isn't yours, and Bitcoin fixes this, and that kind of thing. And so that caused me to take a second hard look at what Bitcoin was and how it worked. And after that, so this is kind of early-ish 2013, probably like, I don't know, it was March or April. It was whenever the Cyprus Bank thing was happening. I think it was early 2013. And that caused me to go down this rabbit hole. And because I have kind of a tech background, kind of a business background, I have an MBA, a computer science degree and stuff. So those two kind of converged. And so I kind of went down the rabbit hole of learning what it was, and it just fascinated me till no end, and still does. So.
Yeah, I think I've tried to explain to my dad about it. And he's 60, and he's been in the oil industry his whole life. He does labor work, and they do pipe fitting and pipe welding. That's what he does. But I think for him, like understanding the algorithm and mining, and just like you, he had it in his head. It's this super complex. No way he's going to understand it. And I really just, okay, he understands what regular mining is. I'm like, it's kind of similar-ish. The way you're getting the issuance, and things can be at this point very regulated as far as like I know about what we're going to make if we're mining and stuff like that. So I think the holding the money yourself and understanding that that these are networks that you're able to send funds through or send assets through, immutable, that people can't stop you, they're not controlled by anybody. I think that is the most key to crypto, that if anybody doesn't understand crypto, they don't understand that part, in my opinion. So I think once you understand that and the value that it has, it's incredible. So awesome crypto background. So how did you find yourself developing and working on Ravencoin then?
Yeah, so I went through kind of from 2013. I did a little bit of mining, just kind of hobbyist kind of stuff, and then I ended up I wanted to build a company in the space, right? So that was my natural instinct, was like, how do I contribute to this to build something? And so I built. Initially, I realized it inverted the flipped or inverted the trust model. So right now, if you buy something online with a credit card and it doesn't arrive, you basically call up Visa and say, hey, it didn't arrive, and they reverse the charges. And so you're trusting Visa, but you're not necessarily trusting the guy who's sending you, let's say, hot sauce or something, right, across the internet, or mailing it to you. So I said the trust model is inverted. So I'll do a company that basically makes it so that it was kind of like I think VeriSign meets eBay rating. So it would be an address that when you sent to that address, be it crypto, we sent Bitcoin to it, that other people had sent Bitcoin to that address had built, that like, oh yeah, I got the hot sauce, oh yeah, it was great service, blah blah blah, that kind of thing. So that way you could trust who you were sending it to, so that you wouldn't have as many scams like send me Bitcoin, I'll send you hot sauce. Then they really were just collecting the Bitcoin, running away because somewhat anonymous. And so I built that. It was called Verified Wallet, and the idea was that you have this address, and then you say, okay, I want to verify this address, and so you send an email, and an email comes back, and you type in a number, and then you text something, and so basically it kind of attaches identity to this address. And the only reason for that is to kind of keep it from sock puppeting, right? Meaning you're basically like building up some fake stuff and then running away, building up some fake ratings, and then you're not, fake ratings or even real ratings, but then running away. And so you needed an identity attached to an address. The intention was not what we have today, which is like KYCing everything. The intention was like, I'm a trusted merchant. I want you to trust me. I'm going to build a rating to my address. And so I built that. In the middle of that, so this would probably be late 2013, early 2014, some other people came along and started talking about sort of what we have now, which is this KYC, all the addresses have to be attached to a name, all that stuff. Well, at the time, in the internet, or the crypto ecosystem was very different at the time. It's mostly people that realize that's a horrible idea, and it is a horrible idea. And so they were like, no, you can't ever attach names to addresses because all the transaction information is all public. The quantity of what that address owns is all public. And so they were right. I mean, for generically for everybody's information to be attached to addresses is just a bad idea. And so, but what I realized is that at this point, I probably couldn't. I didn't have enough money or marketing power to say, hey, no, what my idea is like totally different than those guys' idea, which is horrible. My idea is good.
It's good.
This I didn't have enough to do that. So I kind of pivoted and changed direction and said, I've got a different problem now. There's all these altcoins, which was kind of altcoin season in like 2013, 2014. I said, I need something to keep track of all of this. And so I need some way to like, what's in Mount Gox, and what's in Kraken, and what's that kind of thing, and then what's in my wallets that I'm holding, and what's in my whatever, and for mining, what's at the mining pools and stuff. So I built that. It was called Coin CPA, and it was actually really cool. You could say, where's my Bitcoin? It would tell you it's like in these wallets, in these places, whatever. Where's my whatever Litecoin? And we tell you, like, you could kind of slice it and dice it and look at it different ways. And I figured someday if they ever really are going after taxes, this is going to be a big deal, because then you could track it and you could have it help with taxes and stuff. And then it ended up, I got a letter from basically it was a knock on the door, and I went to which is unusual for mail. We have a mailbox, right? So the person was like, hey, the mailman was handing me a letter, and I'm like, what is this? And he's like, well, it's a certified letter. Well, those are never good. So I said, what happens if I don't sign for this? He's like, oh, we just send it back. So, oh, okay, yeah, send it back. And so anyway, I got the same letter about a week later to the regular mailbox. It was basically the state of Utah going, you can't use the word CPA in the company name, right? You can't use those three letters. I'm like, what? That's ridiculous. I mean, it's like they're reserving like those three letters in that order, like for anything. And apparently they do, which seemed absurd to me at the time. And so anyway, I went and argued with them, and ended up losing, and ended up having to pay a fine, do whatever, and change the name. But it seemed absurd to me. Also super frustrating. I mean, it's just like the absurdity of like a thing like that. Anyway, so then I ended up selling Coin CPA to someone, and we were going to build something different. So I was working with some people who were great marketers, and then that in the middle of that, and so I'll get to your point of your question, but in the middle of that, I got this opportunity I went to help company, and so I went to the Netherlands to a crypto conference, and it just happened to be that Patrick Byrne was the CEO of Overstock. It's in Utah. Happened to be the keynote speaker, and he was the keynote speaker because Overstock started taking crypto in like January of 2014, and so I happened to be there. Happened to listen to his keynote, and then in the Q&A, he said, "You know what? Lawyers are going to kill me for saying this, but I'd like to make a parallel crypto stock, a parallel crypto equity to Overstock. And I thought that would be cool. Like stock on the blockchain sounds like a great idea. You could transfer it around and whatever. And I said, I want to be part of that. So anyway, it took a little while, but eventually I was part of that project. So that was T0. They bought a company, and T0 bought a company in New York called SpeedRoute, which routed a lot of stock-based traffic, and we basically built a trading platform for stocks. And so, long story short, I'll skip a couple things that happened in the middle of there, but I'm still working for Overstock. It's now Medici Ventures, which is a venture arm in Overstock. And Patrick came, knocked on office door and said, "Hey, we're thinking of doing this Ravencoin token." And I said, "That's what I want to do." And I happen to have the skill set, C++ development. And so we built a team. And so that's kind of like how I got into Overstock, how I got to that meeting where Patrick said, "We want to build this." And he had, Bruce Fenton was on the board of either Overstock or Medici. And it was Bruce Fenton's idea. And he had gotten some developers that didn't work out. And Patrick said, "Hey, well, I have some developers," meaning, there was developers within Medici, and I heard about it and said, "I want to be part of that." So that's how I ended up leading the team.
That's really cool. That's really cool that you kind of just caught the bug from listening to him going to that seminar like that. And that's where we are now. It's crazy to think about. That's what maybe led to that decision for you, but that's a super cool. So you talked about, the first thing you were in 2013 got into crypto at all because of mining. So do you mine Ravencoin?
Sometimes I do when it's cold. I'll mine a little bit. Nothing substantial. I bought a machine specifically when we were building it initially, just with one card. If it's cold, I'll mine. If not, it's not profitable. At least with my electricity rates, my air conditioning electricity rates, and when it's warm, it's not profitable. But I'll mine if it's cold.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. So you guys all got together, and as a crypto, historically, most developers take some sort of fee or some sort of part of the coin allocation as later payment. And so you guys didn't do that in a time where so many cryptos were doing ICOs and coming out like that. So talk about that a little bit.
Okay, we did launch right in the middle of the ICO, or we're building right in the middle of this ICO thing, right, where people were just like putting up white papers and collecting Ethereum and sending out a token kind of thing. And so we were launching in the middle of building this in the middle of that. And I really credit Bruce Fenton. He was a stockbroker, has his stockbroker's license and things like that. And he said, this selling of a token, right, and then with the expectation of profits and all of that stuff, he said that's a security. I mean, under U.S. securities law, that's not legal. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I kind of knew some of that just because with T0, right, the whole purpose of T0 is trading securities, and so we kind of was pretty aware of what the difference of what a security is. I have to say, just because that some of these laws that about securities, I don't agree with. I think they may have had a time back in when they were put in place. They were probably good in 1933, 34, and 1940 when they put all these things together. I think we're in a different time now, and so I think those need to be rethought, reevaluated in the context of the blockchain being a ledger that keeps stuff safe. So I just want to throw that out there. I think those need to be looked at again. But I was aware of the fact that the ICOs were kind of, at least in the U.S., we're kind of in violation of securities issuance laws, many of them, and so we just kept building. And but really, I credit Bruce for kind of saying that we're not collecting money. Also, I credit Patrick and Medici Ventures for saying we'll fund this, right? So we didn't need to. This wasn't like we went into work and we didn't get paid, right? It wasn't we were part of the Medici team and company, and we got a paycheck, and that was being funded by by kind of Overstock / Medici Ventures. So when we were done, the advantage of that is that we didn't have any kind of regulatory overhang or anything where, you know, the SEC could come and say, hey, wait a minute, you sold tokens and there was an expectation of profit and you collected money. And so you violated, you know, the 4 tests of the Howey test. And so we don't have any of that, which actually made it much better for being able to go to an exchange and say, no, we're definitely not a security, right? We have an attorney that's, you know, evaluated it and, you know, and via the various, you know, Supreme Court tests and stuff, and we don't have any of that. Made it a lot easier, a lot better for us. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then also,
go ahead.
Sorry. One other thing is I think it made it feel a lot more fair to people, right? Because it isn't like, oh yeah, this is just like a money grab. Like, oh, we kept half. We built this project. Why don't you guys go buy some on a market? You know, as you kind of have this ability to kind of like, and I'm going to sell it into the. You know, we none of that existed, right? Everybody had to kind of mine it themselves. And stuff, so
It's maybe so ahead of its time. Besides Bitcoin, and I think other coins maybe didn't know better, or maybe they just didn't care in the time where, you know, it was kind of the Wild West. But so Ravencoin, you know, you're developing it at 2017, 2018 is right, you know, at the beginning when it's released. So talk about the initial release of Ravencoin as it, you know, comes out.
Yeah, so it was sort of a flag day. I was actually pushing towards. I wanted to release it on Bitcoin's 9th birthday, meaning I thought that would be kind of cool. Like actually release it on January 3rd. We had actually been test mining for almost a month, where people had their laptops. Overstock actually made a change, and we had to go to like Overstock's attorney or whatever and change the rules, because in Overstock you have these laptops that everybody has, and they have rules. So you cannot use this laptop for any personal stuff. But Patrick's like, well, we want kind of other people, you know, people in Overstock to be able to mine it, and so we actually got that changed, and so people in Overstock could mine it. So people in Overstock were helping to test mine it, so they you know, kind of knew how it worked. We were building on the test net. We had, you know, like pretty good mining hash power from lots of. You could mine it on a laptop. We put the mining software back in, and anyway, yeah. So we wanted to launch it on that, you know, on January 3rd. So we targeted that, and then on January 3rd, we had the code to basically create the Genesis block, and we needed a quote, which is the, you know, basically the quote that you put in there. And so people are familiar with it. There's one in Bitcoin, and it basically proves that you were not pre-mining prior to that date, because you get a headline out of a newspaper that you couldn't have gotten the day before, because you wouldn't have known what the headline was. And so it proves that you weren't pre-mining prior to that date, and that's the reason for it. And so I wanted to get one of those, and I looked up on the same publication that Bitcoin got theirs, and it wasn't the main headline, but it was one of the articles right in there was something like something about Bitcoin being used for companies. I'm like, this is perfect. I mean, just is sort of like circular. The one from Bitcoin was you know, about that they're doing this, they're printing money again or whatever, and bailing stuff out. And then we had one that would kind of reference Bitcoin. So we put that into the Genesis block, created the first block, and then told everybody they can mine. And then it just started, and Bruce had sent out in his tweet, and lots of followers and stuff. And so it, you know, started up pretty fast, got going pretty quick.
And so the asset part of Ravencoin didn't come out with the, you know, initial release. So talk about,
that's right.
You know, kind of how that came about and how that was released, and a bit about the asset part. And if you want to, you can even go as far as to talking about the restricted asset part.
Yeah. So assets were always part of the plan. In fact, when we had first heard about it, I'd been involved in open assets and Counterparty and things like that, the other platforms to put tokens on, and that was 4T0. And so I was evaluating we'll call it the base for what we were going to do. We weren't writing it from scratch, so we had options to use Bitcoin as a base, Dash as a base, Mastercoin as a base. So we had different options, and so we were looking at those, and I'd done kind of pros and cons on all of those, and then Bruce said, no, we should use the most secure code. We should use Bitcoin. It's like, okay, it's gonna make it a little tougher to build assets on top because there's nothing there for that, right? Whereas some of the other platforms had kind of something for us. So anyway, we used Bitcoin as the base, but the intention was always to build a platform for adding tokens. And so once after it launched, then we kind of went into that next phase. And so we hired some developers specifically that could help out with that, and started building towards that. And then I had done, I'd worked with open assets, and then also, well, open assets, I built an Explorer for another company between working for T0 and Medici, even though they were kind of the same thing. I had left for about 8 months and helped build an Explorer. And so I was familiar with that, and also its weaknesses. One of the weaknesses was that the metadata, so the data about the token in these things that were built on top of Bitcoin, were basically shortened URLs, just bit.ly links that went in there that pointed to a website that told you about what the token was. And that, you know, the idea was it pointed to that and said, okay, the website might just have JSON to say what it was, or it might be a picture, whatever. But those websites in most cases were gone. They just did, you know, they made a token, they made the website, they did it, now it's gone. So you didn't even know what the token was at the time. It was missing information. And so we need something better than that. And so that was the genesis of doing, having IPFS, because that IPFS name is the file, right? And so yes, the file could be not pinned and you could lose it, but you also couldn't tamper with it afterwards, right? So you couldn't like put in an IPFS hash and then tamper with the file and say, oh yeah, no, it was really, you know, a fraction of a building. Well, what I really meant was it was a fraction of, you know, this piece of paper or whatever, right? It just you couldn't tamper with it. So that was a big deal, and that's been super useful in Ravencoin. And the other one that I thought was important was in open assets, you could have a name, and they gave you a unique name. And this is true of Ethereum assets as well. You get a unique name. In Ethereum, it's like a 40-character hex thing. It's basically a hash of the instance of the smart contract. And so you don't get to control it. It's kind of random. But that's your contract. And you can add a name, but anybody can add the same name to their contract. And so people can kind of do spoofing and fakes, right? If you're not paying attention to that Ethereum smart contract and make sure it's the right one, then you think you're buying that token, but you're really not. You're buying something that somebody's trying to trick you into buying that token, things like that. So because of that, we built in this ability to choose a name and then have it be unique and guaranteed and yours. And so it has this DNS-like registration type system built into the protocol, and that's been useful as well to make it so that and then we also didn't want spoofing, and so we got rid of lowercase letters. You couldn't make lowercase i's look like lowercase l's, or capital I's look like lowercase l's, and zeros look like o's and things like that, to try and make it so that if that token name is the one you're buying, it is, you know, kind of, it's on Ravencoin, it is the right one. So we did that. And then, yeah, we actually, that launched, it was intended to launch kind of the end of October and end up launching on November 5th with actually kind of a fight with miners and stuff like that. So it was like a whole kind of historical thing. There's articles about it under, they're kind of older, but under Tron Black.medium.com, there's an article about how that launched. And so it actually triggered or became activated on November 5th with kind of a fight with some miners that weren't participating with it. And then after that, there was some, that T0 was still using Ethereum for doing tokens, and they were doing it because they needed whitelisting. So they needed to restrict the movement of tokens to addresses that they had KYC'd, that they had approved. And so they're using whitelisting. And I think whitelisting is a bad idea. I thought it was a bad idea then. Turned out it was, especially with the gas fees. Still a bad idea. Because the more people you have in, you know, using your token, the larger that database gets until it just becomes unwieldy, and it costs a lot to kind of add everybody in. And so we kind of rethought it and said we can do something similar. We use tagging, And so we built restricted assets. So restricted assets have the ability where the issuer can freeze them, and the tagging can make it so that the token's only moved among tagged addresses. And so it lets you create a smaller ecosystem where everybody can't own the token. It has to be tagged with the tag that you or one of your partners, commercial partners can tag the addresses with, stuff like they've been KYC'd or they're accredited or they're part of the club or whatever, it's a generic system, but that's what it's intended for.
So right now, the way Ravencoin is at its current state, using restricted assets, do you think it's ready for institutional investors and people, big time moving money and assets like that right now?
I do. I think it's ready. I think the tech is a little bit complex. So people who are used to being, having the systems already in place for them, where they just go, oh yeah, you guys take care of that part. We'll sell it. You guys, keep track of the cap table, basically and so there's already partners or people out there that they go, oh yeah, no, CompuShare or whatever takes care of the cap table and stuff like that. We're still working on building that part. So I think DigiShares, for example, and there's a new one here, FundMe, here in Utah. They're ones that can do the issuance and then also put stuff on chain and then things like that. So I think those partners are still being worked on, so that somebody who's doing an issuance just has a place to go. It's just sort of a one-stop shop. Hey, can you guys do this? Put it up, to collect the money, do all of that kind of stuff. Those are just being built now or just coming online now. But I think Ravencoin's been able to do it for 4 years or so.
So you think beforehand there could have been a person that come on there as maybe he's an institution or some person that maybe just had some sort of assets or money or whatever it may be to tokenize, we'll say, legally doing it through DigiShares and everything like that. It's making it very simple so that this person's not just like going through the SEC themselves and having to get lawyers and trying to figure it all out themselves, I suppose.
Yeah, so that's another part of it. Like every issuer kind of wants to make sure that they're doing stuff legal. So there's still like, oh yeah, you got to check with your lawyer or whatever. We still need something where several have gone through and there's sort of like, a document that says, here's why it's legal, here's why it is a security, here's why you're issuing it under an exemption, meaning an exemption to full registration, which take cost millions of dollars or whatever. So just a document that kind of shows them what to do, so that it's not like every issuer going to find a lawyer and the lawyer analyzing all this stuff. It just needs to be like, here's a 2-pager that says, what you need to do and why it's legal and why it is a security and you have to follow these rules. But the tech kind of handles it from there, right? The KYC tagging, and all of that kind of stuff that, the tech can kind of keep the issuance kind of in that legal box. And I think that's all possible. It's just kind of in the process of being built still.
Yeah, I agree. So in your mind with Ravencoin right now, as far as development, what is the most important developed work that's either being worked on right now or that's needed?
Yeah, so there's some development that's been done. It's pay to script hash, and it's a little bit inside baseball kind of stuff. The reason it's helpful is for anyone who wants to store assets safely, like with a multi-sig, and then mint them on another chain. And so it's really kind of for that cross-chain capability. It already exists for Raven, so if you want to do that now, you can already do a large multi-sig for Raven, lock it up basically, and by lock it up I mean multiple signers would have to sign to get it back out. And this is used for federated cross-chain platforms. So this is like, I want to take my Raven, which has a value, right? And I want to lock it up and I want to mint a parallel one over on, let's say, Binance Smart Chain or Ethereum or Solana or something like that. And then you can use that in the DeFi. You can use it with automatic market makers. You can borrow against it. You can use a collateral to create a stable coin. There's a whole bunch of stuff you can do in that world that you can't do in the Ravencoin world. And so that capability already exists for Raven. Pay to script hash lets you do that for assets. So you can potentially take something that was, a share of a building or something like that, or share of artwork, and you could hop that over and then let people borrow against that and create other things and loans and stuff like that. It's not super important. I think it's important going forward. It's not super time sensitive. I don't think there's a lot of people standing by saying, hey, I could do this right now. But I do think as things go forward and the ecosystem gets bigger, it's important to be able to take the assets that are on Ravencoin and be able to use them in this kind of wider ecosystem. And also a big advantage to be able to say, hey, the best place to create assets is Ravencoin. And then you can move them to whatever asset platform or DeFi platform or smart contract platform that has, good fees, good things for borrowing and these basically financial Legos over here. And you can move it to any of them. And so you don't have to pick a winner right away. Most important thing though is that is safe. There's a bunch of other code that kind of fixes little things and just kind of the UI things. And so that's kind of the next thing. I don't think that Ravencoin is that it would be good for Ravencoin to say, oh, we're going to be making lots of changes all the time, to kind of keep it like, I think it's better to be a little bit more like Bitcoin in that it's like super decentralized, doesn't change much. It's a layer one platform. Other stuff can be built on top of it, or with pay to script hash can be hopped over into these other ecosystems. But it's probably not a good idea for it to be one that's just like churning and stuff like that. So I'm not sitting around thinking like, what's next for Ravencoin? What can we add to it to, whatever, obviously improving the UI and things like that. Those things, once we have it, that's another stable version out. Those things can change without any problem at any time. Anything that's consensus related, chain related, has to be, few and far between, or potentially never again. It's the goal is to have a stable platform that people know what it is, and it should act like in some ways you can think of it act like a file system, like it just works and you just know what you have, and then all the things that are building on top of it aren't worried about it's like shifting sand and it's moving, and now you've broken my entire stack because you changed that. We want it to be like this rock solid stable layer for asset issuance that anybody can build on top of.
Right, and I think that's the biggest thing is building on top of, because personally, I think adding the P2SH is going to help a lot. Just like you said, being able to hop assets to DeFi is going to completely change the game, and I don't think there's anything wrong with Ravencoin. People say the developers we need to develop. I'm like, it's been developed. I think it's great. It is what it is. You just have to use it. You have to know what you have.
Yep.
So as the person that's kind of like, a known member in the community, but this is a very, decentralized blockchain. What happens to Ravencoin if you just up and leave tomorrow or today?
Yeah. I love this question. My goal is to make it so that, other than the fact that I get to, talk about it and things like that, that kind of nobody notices, right? Like I get hit by a bus and it's like, hey, we haven't heard from Tron for a while, but Ravencoin just keeps going. Like I want it, and this should be true of like every crypto project. It isn't, but should be, right? If any one person is like too influential, it's not helpful for the project. It's not good, right? You can do that. You can do those things with the database, right? If there's a guy who's like, just like, I'm going to be here forever. This, you can stick stuff in a database and everybody trusts him. You can do this stuff in a database. Or if you're not worried about somebody saying, hey, I'm knocking on that door and saying, we want you to change this or block this or whatever. You want that to be just code. It's just code, right? You can go talk to the code. It does all the rules. You talk to the code. And so we, especially for Ravencoin specifically, I want to separate it from most other projects that are out there, right? Like it's a lot like Bitcoin, and potentially you could argue almost more decentralized than Bitcoin. No, I didn't Satoshi my way out, right? Like disappear. I may someday, but so Bitcoin has that advantage, right? Satoshi built it, gifted it, gone, right? So that's an advantage that Bitcoin has. But I think that's a valuable thing, right? To say it's like the code is the thing. So I'm running the foundation, but the foundation runs a few, I'm going to say nice but not essential things, and that we're running a collection of nodes. But the nature of Ravencoin built into the code is a collection of nodes outside of the foundation. It includes the foundation one, but it includes ones that have been out there running from, we don't even know who, right? They may be ones run by Binance or whatever, but they've been running for a while, and those IP addresses are built into the Ravencoin code, right? We said which are the ones that have been around longest, and that's built in. So it's not dependent on the nodes that the foundation is running, but we're running about 20 nodes, and they're geographically dispersed. But we're like a fraction of the nodes, right? There's hundreds of other nodes or thousands of other nodes elsewhere. And then the foundation also monitors the ecosystem, like are all the exchanges that supported Ravencoin, are they still up? Are the trading venues up? Are the chat things up? The Discords up? Or the just kind of monitoring the ecosystem. And mainly that's so that the page, Ravencoin Foundation, is a good place to get to everything from. There's a footer, super ugly, that's at the bottom, but it's categorized, and you can kind of jump to, I want to do NFTs, or I want to trade, or I want to do whatever, or I want to download the software, I want to get the mobile app or whatever. You can just spoke out from there. And we monitor all those links just to make sure that they're kind of all still there, so that footer is kind of up to date and not, has everything. But definitely don't want to be, I don't want to be an important enough part of Ravencoin that I can't just like disappear.
Yeah, I think that aspect is just something to touch about, and it's something that I've always thought myself. I was like, well, the way it seems to me is, if Tron did leave or something happened to him, I think Ravencoin would be fine. Like you said, the code's already out there, and you're not really in control of it either way. But so talking about, I guess we'll talk about NFTs a little bit, because Ravencoin was kind of made for tokenizing things, and you can tokenize NFTs. It was kind of maybe even an accident that it's really good at it. So do you see Ravencoin becoming a competitor to Ethereum, or how do you see the NFT ecosystem going?
So it actually turned out to be great for NFTs. I mean, just with the built-in IPFS thing and the unique token name, and then also the fact that unique tokens have to come off of a root token, gives them provenance, and so that some of that doesn't exist in the Ethereum world of NFTs. In fact, there was if you haven't read it, for anybody who's watching, there's a article by Moxie Marlinspike about NFTs, and he kind of shows that some of these NFTs are like, they're the URL can point to a website, and he actually made NFTs that show a different picture depending on which whether you're getting to it by Windows, Mac, or Linux. It just changed the picture, because it's really just a pointer. Now I think you can put an IPFS link in, but it's really, then if you're doing that, it's not just the IPFS link, it's actually pointing to like Cloudflare, or it's basically the URL of the link, as opposed to just the IPFS. That means that someone could change it if they get access to the Cloudflare domain, or whatever domain you put in there. All of a sudden, your NFT can be a totally different thing, right? Different graphic, different promise. So I think that makes Ravencoin a little bit better for NFTs. Also, the provenance. The fact that whoever the only one that can issue that name would be the main asset holder, and so that can be an artist, a studio, and that kind of thing. And it can even be like hierarchical, so you can have studio, artist, and then so multiple artists in one studio, and then the NFT, and that builds kind of both a hierarchy, but then also like a trust level. Like, I really like this studio, or I really like this artist, or I really like the artist under the studio. That kind of thing, and you can build that provenance of where it's coming from, and I think that's really valuable. Whereas the ones built on ERC 721 on Ethereum are are just sort of like, oh, here's the contract and here's the URL pointing to something. It's like a different level of tracking. So
Yeah. So are you pretty knowledgeable of Ethereum smart contracts?
I wouldn't say super knowledgeable. I've done some Solidity coding and had lots of discussions with Solidity coders about them.
So I was listening to a space the other day, and LSJ was saying, and this is I think the first time I heard it, but once a smart contract is created, essentially the creator of it has basically like these master keys. And so at any point in time, say that artist, they could change something, or they can send away your NFT with those master keys. So you are initially, you're spending all your money on these, Ethereum NFTs, but somebody does have complete control and ownership still of that NFT and could send it out of your wallet if they desired. Is that correct?
I don't think that's true of like all of them. I think they have to build that into the smart contract. And I know that's true specifically of some smart contracts, meaning the ones that are built around especially securities. I think they're kind of built on ERC 1404, I think. Some of those do have like an admin key. And the reason for that, they built it in because the government kind of said, hey, you need to be able to like freeze trading and seize this and stuff like that. Well, I disagree with seize. We actually in Ravencoin restricted assets, we did freeze, so you could freeze it in place, and then you could even put a memo with it that said this is frozen in place under the order of the government of whatever. Here's the document. You could put all that information in there. But seize seems super dangerous. The idea that like you put it into an exchange, the exchange is holding that token maybe with a cold wallet, right, in super storage where only the executives, combined with their special device could transfer it back or whatever, and they put it in the database in their exchange, right, and then it gets seized, and then their database doesn't sync up with what's in cold storage, right? And super protected because it just got vaporized because of the seize. So a seize seems absurd to me in the terms of a blockchain. If you're going to get to seize, put it in a database. So I wouldn't even build it. I just had discussions with people that were like, "Oh, government's saying you have to have seize." It's like, then use a database. We're gotten to that point where they're just like, "Oh, just take it away, take it off the chain," right? And you can have those two things out of sync. Then we've crossed a line. Use a database. It doesn't make sense. As far as the NFTs, I don't think that most of those. I mean, you can build any contract you want, right? And some of the contracts may have that kind of admin ability, but I think you have to actually build it in, and you just make another signing authority that just says, "Oh, I can do this," and you can definitely build it into the contract.
Okay, I guess a better, more educated way for me to say it is if a nefarious NFT artist wanted to scam or rug pull people, they can code that into a smart contract. The average NFT buyer who doesn't know how to read a smart contract will buy it, and they'll probably lose their money. Versus, we'll just talk about Ravencoin NFT ownership versus, like you said, it has that provenance. It's coming from that person. It has a human readable name. And that asset will go from their wallet into your wallet, which you have to use your keys to get out. And so basically that is sort of removed from the process, you would say, right? With the ability to be like rugged in that facet.
Definitely. Yep.
Well, it's really cool. I think the ownership and just understanding that layer, and I think you gave me a better understanding of it too. So thank you. It's not just always going to be like that. So you don't have to worry about all your NFTs, but if you're buying NFTs, it could be a possibility if that is in the smart contract that you're buying for that NFT. So I had a discussion going back to security tokens. There's so much, I think, maybe speculation with Ravencoin and T0 and how they're going to function together. And so I don't know what you can speak or not speak about, how it's viewed by T0 and if it's going to be part of their, solution set to, tokenizing these businesses, or if it's just up to the businesses themselves.
Yes. So it's the latter. It's up to the businesses themselves. There was a point in time, and it may return, I don't know. So I have less insight into T0. I mean, I've been out for years. But there was a time where the plan was like they would help with the issuance, right? Well, let's issue this. And I think they've even done some, but for the most part, T0 is like not in the issuance business. They're in the, we're going to trade these tokens once they've been issued, and potentially in the case of like Reg D offerings, they have to like wait 6 months or a year before they can trade. And so there's kind of this aging process and stuff. And I think that they're looking for ones that are big and then that have, you know, kind of got to the point where they can trade. And it's going to be whoever, if there's a big one on Ravencoin, it's fairly easy for T0 to add. The only two parts they need to add are deposit and withdrawal, because all the trading actually happens on a database, right? So it's like Coinbase in that regard, or Binance, where you deposit and then everything's database, and then you withdraw, you know, back to your wallet. And so it's really just deposit and withdrawal that they need to add. T0 claims to be token agnostic, meaning they're not saying it has to be Ethereum or whatever. They've done, you know, a few different attempts at different tokens, and some will work and some haven't. You know, partly because of the Ethereum and the fees. You know, that's just kind of changed the nature of the game, right? When you have to pay $50 or whatever, and sometimes it's even more because of the whitelisting, because the cost of checking to see if you can move it out to the wallet gets expensive as you kind of run through that data. But I'm hoping, so for people who don't know, and this is all public, the CEO of T0 has been like an interim CEO for the last, I don't know, some length of time. And there's a new CEO, new investment from ICE. And so I think there'll probably be some changes in T0, but I think it's really going to depend more on whether people are issuing their land, equity, whatever on Ravencoin. Then I'm sure T0 can add the deposit withdrawal pretty easy. Then I'll throw this offer out there. I will help them, or at least advise their developers on how to do that quickly and easily if they want that help.
That's awesome. So where do you see Ravencoin going in the next 5 or 10 years?
So hopefully kind of in the same direction it's been going. The NFT thing has been growing really well, and I think for good reason. I think NFTs, I think, will evolve a little bit. This is just my own thoughts. I think NFTs will move a little bit more to being like memberships of things, and there's already some examples of those. I think Gary Vee has one that has, like, you get access to his conferences that normally sell out and things like that. And I think they'll evolve a little bit more, you know, in that regard. I think there'll also be NFTs that can be used inside the metaverse. I think that's going to be a thing. But for that, I think it's up to the platform. And there's one example of this that I know of, and that's Twitter allowing NFTs to be used as the icon with sort of some other indication that it is an NFT. I think that's the direction it's going to go. It's where the platform acknowledges the NFTs from specific chains and then treats them as 3D models potentially inside the environment and things like that. But some sort of designation that this is legit, meaning it was issued by, you know, specific artists or companies and things like that. So I think that's kind of where we're headed there. I'm familiar with like some projects, like real estate projects and things like that are being tokenized on Ravencoin. This is outside of NFTs now. This is just tokenizing what would be considered security. So they're being legally issued on that. And then also some platforms that have kind of agreed that, you know, that they want to be able to help trade those tokens. So I think those things are coming. So that's outside of Ravencoin, but it's like on top of, meaning once those things get built, meaning the ability to quickly go and create like Reg CF offerings, right? Like I have a company and here's my, you know, here's what I'm doing. And you fill out, I think you fill out a Form C, which is kind of a beast, to be honest. It's like a 20-page form, but it basically says what you're offering. And then you offer it on a Reg CF platform, which is broker has that. And then you can raise now up to 5 million, and that changed, I think, last year. Before that, it was 1 million, but now you can raise 5 million, and you don't have to raise it from accredited investors, right? So you can raise it from anyone. That's also a good thing. I think there's a lot of pent up demand of people wanting to invest in early stage projects that they like, right? I mean, they evaluate them, they read the form, and they decide. And then, so I think that's a great thing. And then hopefully those are able to trade on some sort of platform after that, or potentially on platforms that use sort of DeFi type tech. We have Raven Trader, which is allows you to offer tokens for Raven and other people to kind of take the other side of it. That's all without nobody's holding anything. It's all non-custodial, and so I think that's coming. Yeah.
Well, it's a lot. I mean, yeah. There's so many different ecosystems on Ravencoin. I mean, there is the NFT ecosystem. There's going to be the STO ecosystem. There's different companies being built, marketplaces, things like that are, layer 2 helping Ravencoin to succeed and make it possible. So these are things that I've all seen come up, honestly, in the last, 12 months or so.
Yep.
And so I think Ravencoin is going to continue to get its part, and I think hopefully in the future it's going to get more of its part, because I think that's what it deserves. I think it's great at what it does. I think what do you think? I just want your opinion. What is your opinion on stuff that Ravencoiners can do for marketing? So I just let you in on something. We are starting like a small team. There's a group of us on Twitter that are trying to make some sort of like marketing plan, like very targeted marketing. And there's a guy that's helping us who's a professor who has done marketing, crypto marketing, different things like that. So we're really trying to make it more of a community involved Ravencoin marketing team. Obviously we're not being paid for it, but we're all trying to do it. So what do you think is the biggest thing that Ravencoin needs marketing in order to kind of get that head in the space that it needs?
Yeah. So what you're doing is perfect, right? That's the hope, right? That there's lots of those, Bitcoin doesn't have a marketing team, right? There's no Bitcoin company, and yet it has tremendous awareness, right? Now it has a decided advantage of being first, but I think longevity, more projects being built on top of it, those types of things where people are like, oh, this is built on Ravencoin. So there's already websites that are like, we're issuing, and they have, our partner, our platform that we're using is Ravencoin with the Ravencoin logo, and those types of things, especially successful projects, that get through that stage of like, oh, we raised and we're trading and things like that. And people are like, oh, it's trading on Ravencoin. If I want to withdraw, it goes to Ravencoin. More of those types of things, because once there's a good pathway from like, oh, I want to raise money and I want to use this, use Ravencoin. Once several of those have been done, I think it will kind of wear a path to, oh, this is the way to do it. And Ravencoin's kind of built for that type of thing, whereas Bitcoin isn't, right? There's some, tokenization stuff that's built on top, but it's not built for it. In fact, a lot of the maximalists don't like that kind of stuff, so it has some antagonism when you use it. Whereas Ravencoin was custom built for that type of thing, so that's good. Other groups, basically. So the group you're involved with marketing, other groups doing marketing. If the foundation can help, right? If there's people that say, hey, we want to do this for marketing, we want to do it for your group, we can kind of transfer stuff through that as a trusted entity. But you can also collect it directly. I'm not saying it has to go through that, but if we can help in any way with that type of thing, that's kind of what the foundation's there for, is to either promote your groups and route people to you, or to help, that kind of thing. But as you point out, or as we know, there isn't, it's not Ravencoin Corp, right? So there isn't there's not a stock that you can invest in to invest in Ravencoin. If you like Ravencoin, you kind of join, you can get some Raven, and you're participating in the ecosystem and building stuff, and And so it's an open source project, not a company. And that has pros and cons. One of the cons is doesn't have a big marketing department, but the pros, I think, still far outweigh the cons. So
Yeah,
makes
I
it a
agree.
unique project. Yeah.
I agree. I mean, it's super unique. I mean, I'm passionate about it myself. You know, I think my wife probably gets tired of me saying the word Ravencoin. I think, and sometimes I'll talk about the mining rig and I'll just start a sentence just like, if it's about the mining rig, I just don't even want to hear about it. And you know, it is what it is. But you know, we're passionate about it because we see what it can do. I think it would be so cool to be able to market to small businesses. Like I told my wife, if I didn't have a job, I was rich, money didn't matter, I would start trying to get small businesses or businesses maybe bigger involved in, if they're trying to seek fundraising, you know, getting them to maybe issue on Ravencoin and, you know, do it all legally through DigiShares or somewhere like that. I think a company that seeks out these people and works in partnership with DigiShare, I mean, that could be a huge business right there. I can't do it right this second, but something I'm even thinking about, like it could be done and be very successful with, you know, taking a percentage of getting these companies onboarded. And I think onboarding is for NFTs, for the STOs, for almost every part of Ravencoin at this point is just awareness and onboarding and showing people the power it has. So I'm super excited, man. So lastly, I just think, where do you kind of see the P2SH implementation, you know, kind of coming in? Do you think that there is going to be another big miner outcry or war to get it to go in, or you think hopefully it's not going to be a big deal?
It's harder now than it was, let's say, 2 or 3 years ago, but mainly because the ecosystem is just bigger. And also, you know, at least the last times there was sort of a team within Medici that could kind of help, you know, kind of say, hey, you know, we you know, checklist of going through all the people that need to switch. Also, it's very important that we get the economic actors switched, you know, first, right? So the Binances and the now payments and, you know, everybody who's kind of like, you know, trading and using, you know, for Ravencoin for payments and for exchanges and things like that need to upgrade first, because you know, they want to make sure they're getting the right Raven and that they switch over and trigger at the same time. I don't feel like it's a rush, meaning if there isn't anybody right now that's saying, hey, we need this right away. I think if we had, there's 2 stablecoin proposals, and I think one of those could also do, you know, the could use pay to script hash to move assets over, could help build that, but that would need to be funded first. Right now, the most important thing is just kind of keeping it safe. If someone builds it, and then I have basically signing keys, so the Ravencoin Foundation will sign, you know, kind of a trusted version of like the Windows one and digitally sign it. But right now, I'm not like pushing for it to happen like tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to know. It's kind of interesting, and it's good to be aware that there's no, you know, huge rush for it, but it will help, you know, make things easier for people and kind of bridge Ravencoin assets over, which I think that would be the big thing. So, how do you feel about Ravencoin? Do you kind of feel like it's a little bit like your baby, and hearing people be really passionate about it, does that just make you super proud, or what?
It does make me super proud. Like I'm super impressed, like with the community, with the way it's been adopted, with the honestly, the thing I'm probably most happy about or proud about is, and not because of me, just because like it worked out, is that the community is friendly. And I've seen like other projects and stuff, and just the, you know, fighting and attacking and things like that. And I just think, wow, I mean, it's like open and embraces new people and stuff. And so I just think it's like, I'm just so glad to be involved in something like that. But, you know, and I can't say that'll last forever, but right now, I mean, the idea, especially even to just bring people into crypto, if you've never done any crypto, or if you've ever been turned off by like asking a question, then getting your head ripped off, start with Ravencoin instead, right? And kind of learn about it through that pathway, because it's different than a lot of the other projects.
I agree. People are very helpful, and they want to see you succeed. And I think the crazy thing to me, Tron, is that, you know, there's these mining discords that have thousands of Ravencoiners mining it that haven't seen the NFT ecosystem, or they don't know that you can do STOs, or that there's assets. Or it blows my mind. You know, I'm like, did you guys read the white paper? Do you know what it, you know, clearly not, but so that's the thing to me, is that there are, you know, Ravencoiners, Ravencoin miners, people that are doing, you know, that know parts about it, but they don't know everything about it. So I think really, go ahead.
Speaking of that, I had a call the other day, and somebody's building like a big mining pool and everything. And then, you know, so I was talking about assets, and I'm like, assets, what's that? It's like, it's like, there's this disconnect. It's like, it's both. I mean, it's like such an important part of Ravencoin. And yet, you can actually be like, oh, it's, you know, they're just thinking of it like Litecoin. It just happens to be profitable, and be completely unaware, which amazed me. Like you said, it's surprising.
Yeah, when I first got into it, you know, I was, you know, I mined Ethereum some, and I've always been into crypto, and I remember using tons of different, you know, platforms, trading platforms and things like that. But the Block Explorer was something that I always, you know, would mess with, and the Ether scan and stuff like that. And like seeing the transaction, I was like, this is so cool. So cool with Ravencoin too. And then I was like, Asset Explorer, what's that? You know, and then I started going through, and I could see all these assets, and I was like, oh man. And then I started reading more and about, you know, like the STOs and how that could be a possibility on Ravencoin essentially, and how that's what it's built for. So that's where I think anybody that reads through everything and fully understands what it can do, it's not what it necessarily will do, because it has to do it, right? And we got to get the people to come and want to put their companies on it. But I think what it is Ravencoiners themselves are becoming inspired, and they are starting to, whatever they're doing in their life, try to bring Ravencoin into it. These different people that I'm seeing start to make their own STOs and doing it through Ravencoin, and then telling other people about DigiShares and how they did it. And I've been sending different people to Jake, who's trying to do things on DigiShares with them and make some STOs, which is awesome. And I've been sending people to him just so they can talk to him about his experience, because I don't know more about it yet. So it's just, there's a lot to look forward to. There's way more than meets the eye when it comes to Ravencoin. And that's why I make these videos, because and maybe this video in particular will maybe highlight that more, so that more people are aware of what it can do and the possibilities that it has.
Yeah. And once we have a few examples, right? Once the few get through the DigiShares and are on secondary trading and that kind of thing, I think pointing those out, right, and saying, here's the map, right? Here's the pathway. It's still, I mean, it's like T0 has been trying to do this for, you know, since like 2015. And, you know, so it's been 6 years, and it's still, there's not a ton of it, right? It's coming, and there's companies building up for it. But it's still not as big as I would have expected by now. But it's growing. So
yeah, do you think just like the traditional systems make it so hard for this to be regulated, and you think that's why T0 has to go through all these hurdles with regulation?
So I think it is challenging to the existing system, and so the existing system doesn't want it to exist, meaning, you know, if it's super easy to do this, right, to create a company, raise capital and get it trading and stuff, it's super easy, and it should be, right? The tech is like, you should be able to do this literally from your phone. Like, hey, I'm doing this, you guys interested? Yep. Oh, that'd be great. I'll participate, right? And then oh, we'll trade. Oh, I didn't buy in the initial thing. I want some now as I see it growing or whatever. That you should be able to do that on your phone from beginning to end, like idea to like raising capital. You should be able to do that, you know, from a cell phone.
Yeah. To talk on the point real fast, JC Keen from the Ravencoin community posted on the STO market Twitter they said make a story about, you know, STOs, and he said a person walks into a bar and decides they like that bar. They pull out their phone and they buy, you know, ownership in that bar, $300 worth of ownership.
Yep.
They leave the bar a couple months later, they get a dividend, boom, just
Yep.
right to their phone. A couple months later, they decide, I don't like that bar anymore. They sell it, they get the Ravencoin or whatever, you know, monetary thing they want. They could do that all through Ravencoin, kind of behind the scenes, essentially, is how we see things going, which is, that's incredible for, you know, people that use something every day. Like, I worked at a dog daycare for a long time, you know, and dog daycares are something where not everybody can afford just to go drop their dog off to play every single day, but there are working people who, you know, make good money and they want their dogs to be cared for every day while they're gone, and they will pay that money every single day. And so working at the dog daycare, I was like, man, this would be so cool to invest in. You know, imagine being able to be a worker and be able to maybe invest in your company that you're working for every day and have part ownership of it while you're working there. That, to me, that's so cool. I mean, I don't know legally if you'd even be able to do that, but that would be cool if you could. So
well, that's the problem. The tech, easy, right? We can do that tomorrow. The issue is the legal, and some of these rules are literally, you know, 80 years old, 90 years old, and we need to rethink them, right? And kind of bring it so that from like idea to capital formation to creating the business to secondary market, so that other people can kind of invest, you know, like can get in and get out, and there's liquidity for the people that invested in your idea, right? So it's not your idea has to exit by selling to Google, but your idea, you know, individuals can exit your idea by selling to someone else who likes your idea. That should be just like built in, and it's the legal that makes it difficult. And so hopefully, hopefully we can get that fixed.
Yeah, I hope so too. Well, I want to wrap up here. I know we've gone over a little bit more time than supposed to. So what are basically your final thoughts on, you know, maybe this year of Ravencoin or Ravencoin going forward, or and anything else that you'd like to just say to the community?
Yeah, one, thank you to the community. I mean, the success of Ravencoin really is about the community, what they're doing, building, participating. I'd like to invite anybody who's watching this isn't part of the community to just know that it's a friendly community. Come in and you can be a part of it just by talking about it, by being on Twitter, by building something, by just, you know, getting some Raven. I mean, there's just all kinds of ways to participate, whether you're technical or non-technical. There's lots of ways to be involved. Just point out a couple of websites, ravencoin.foundation. The bottom footer of that, it's ugly, but it's categorized, and you can kind of jump out to any kind of like sites you want from there. Lots of people, mostly community sites. It's you're just jumping to those sites. I mean, there's stuff on NFTs, there's stuff on how to get Raven, there's stuff, the education stuff. So I'd like to talk about those. Ravencoin.org is kind of the, you know, official-ish site. There's not supposed to be an official-ish site, but you can get the Ravencoin core from there, the signed version from there. Thanks for watching.
Well, I mean, I really enjoyed, you know, just being able to talk to you about it and get a little bit of your insight. And I think it'll give some clarity to the community with maybe how T0 works and how the whole token issuance works, and just give some good clarity to everybody about Ravencoin. And hopefully it'll get some new people involved in the community as well, because I think that's what we're always trying to do, is just onboard and get more people involved. And it's been a wild ride, you know, even for me with starting my journey with mining. And I think right now I'm going to come up with a template to give away to my dog training people. I think if I can have a template, post the dog's name, I post a picture anyways of the dog when they come to me, and I, you know, take a great photo of the dog, but I want to put that photo IPFS hash, basically be able to have their dog, like when it was trained, things about the dog, stuff like that, just some cute information, maybe even add some videos and stuff, and send it to the person through Ravencoin, and it's going to introduce them to Ravencoin, right? So whether they just use it to show people the picture of their dog, I don't care, but I think that's a way that I can help onboard people and just show more people about Ravencoin. So I'm going to start trying to work with some artists and get it built, and make my own main asset probably through that for my business. And I think I'm going to make one for like my Hype Man Studios, and maybe try to put some of my YouTube content through that. And there are so many different ways to use Ravencoin. And I did like the signing signature thing the other day through the Raven Rebels thing, where you can have an asset sent to you and you sign it and get the address and you do it. And then it like basically gave me access to the website, which I've never used it that way. And I was like, this is so cool. So there's so many things to be done like that. Like I could fully have like a YouTube experience through posting it through IPFS and having people subscribe, and maybe even have like a paid subscription service if that's what you wanted to do. And you don't have to have YouTube, you know, they have to go and watch it through this way, but it's different. So that's something that could be done too. But any other final thoughts that you have? If not, thank you so much for all the time that you've given me.
Oh, well, thanks for having me on. I mean, this is the way people find out about Ravencoin. It's one of the ways. It's just through social media and podcasts and things like that, like yours. So anyway, thanks for having me on.
Of course. Well, everybody go check out Tron Black. He is on Twitter at underscore Tron Black, I think.
Just at Tron Black.
Just at Tron Black, sorry.
Yep.
So go check him out on Twitter. I'll put the link below, and you can check out his Medium and anything else. If you guys have any questions about getting involved with Ravencoin or NFTs or STOs or anything that Tron or I could help you on, please reach out to us and get involved. Thanks so much, Tron. You have a great day.
All right.
Man.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.